A very warm welcome to the viewers. For this session, we will be talking about this wonderful dance form from Odissi called Odissi. It's a classical dance form with its varied history and technique, and we'll be having an overview of the technique and the historical aspects of this form. This is part of the lecture series in which we have been covering all the classical dance forms from Bharatanatyam, Mohiniyattam, Kathakali, Kathak, Odissi, and then the forms of the Northeast, Manipuri, and so on. So welcome again for this session. Let us go on to discuss about the historical aspects, wherein we talk about the archaeological evidence, the very many sources from where we have got evidences of the presence of dance from this part of the subcontinent. It may be in the form of sculpture, it may be in the form of text, it may be in the form of murals, and so on. So the very first sculpture, it's a very ancient one from the 2nd century BCE. As you can see, the picture on the right is a panel which have been in which a dance scene is depicted. It is a dance party from the Udayagiri caves. So there are many places called Rani Gumpa, Hanti Gumpa, and so on. This is a cave, and likewise there is another set of caves called Udayagiri and Kandagiri. So at Udayagiri you have this panel which depicts a finished example of a dance scene with full orchestra. If you see clearly, there is a dancer here, and there are also a set of musicians who are there along with her. It's a female dancer. There is a long wind instrument at the top end where a musician is playing, and likewise there is another one with a harp or such a similar instrument here, and then there is another percussionist here with a vertical drum, and the adjacent to her is the musical accompanist with the cymbals or something called the manjira, which is used to beat the tala. So she holds it atop, and that is how she is seen to play that. This is a wonderful panel which has been found out from the this very ancient architectural marvel. This is a Jaina reference. Jainist and Buddhist temple references are many during this period of time. So this panel from Rani Gumpa caves is a first finished example, and then there are also inscription, as I said, Hati Gumpa, again from Udayagiri caves, wherein you have references from where the king Kharavela, who was very well versed in arts and dance and music, and he had arranged a performance of Tandava and Abhinaya. So the inscription states this. So it is almost of the same period. This is even before the Natya Shastra, the period when Natya Shastra was written. So this shows that at this part of this part of Indian subcontinent, you had the presence of dance and music, and people were well aware of it, and the sculptures and also show about this. So coming on to the later period and the early part of the century, you have 6th century at Bharateshwara, where as part of, then you come into a period where the Shaivite temples come in after the Jain and the Buddhist temples. So here we have Shiva's marriage, in which there is an orchestra and a group of women in a dance composition. So not only that, in the later temples from the 8th century, you have many dance images here of Shiva himself dancing, and also dance sculptures here at Lingaraja temple, Parshurameshwara temple, Rajarani, Mukteshwara, and so on. And so when we come to the later part, and that is 8th, 9th, and then 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, after the 10th century, so that is when you have the influence of Vaishnavism. So in the 12th century, you have King Angabhima-deva, who has constructed the construction of Puri Jagannath started before his reign, in fact, but he contributed to making the creation of a Nata Mandir at Puri Jagannath. If you see the image at the right shows the presence of Nata Mandir here in front of the main two temples here. There is a Bhog Mandir at the left and the Nata Mandir which is right in front. So it's a smaller complex, but then which is quite enough to contain a troupe and the accompanists for the performance, and also the seating arrangements necessary for the audience to be seated inside. So that was a well designed structure which came up, which also shows the importance and the patronage that the kings of those times gave to the performing arts of those times. And more importantly, as an offering to God. So because arts were compared to and considered to be the ritualistic components, and then so they considered art and in fact dance mostly as an offering to gods, be it Shiva or Vishnu, and mostly during the time of it is Vaishnavi influence of Vaishnavism that you see this kind of a Nata Mandir, and this same Nata Mandir can also be seen in Konark. So if you look at the textual history of it, some other historical aspects, if you look at it, there are many texts which come up later on after the Vaishnavism got and the Bhakti movement, the Madhura Bhakti started flourishing in Odisha. So that is where you have Jayadeva's Gita Govinda, which was written in the 12th century, and it is written also, it is said that his wife was a dancer, he was a Mahari, and then his wife used to dance, and he, being a poet, was inspired by his wife's dance, and then that is how he started writing Gita Govinda, which is the love song of Krishna and Radha. So therein is depicted the different kinds of Nayikas, the Ashtanayika avasthas, the Sringara avasthas of the different kinds of Nayikas are beautifully portrayed in his Jayadeva's Ashtapati called Gita Govinda, Ashtapati, of 8 stanzas. So here we have other works by poets and Sanskrit texts called like you have Abhinay Chandrika by Maheshwara Mahapatra, where in fact it is not just a poem but then or any literary art, but then it directly refers to the art during that period. It directly refers to the principles, the elements of the art which was contemporarily prevalent during that period in which it was written. So this is by Maheshwara Mahapatra. Abhinay Chandrika is a text that is used as a reference material for the Odissi classical dance. And you have, at the same time, you have Sangeeta Narayan, which though is not the period of the origin of this text is not known. It is by Narayan Dev Gajapati. And in this particularly, there is a Nritya Khand. So the chapter on dance, like how we see in Sangeeta Ratnakara, we have a chapter on dance. Likewise here, Narayan Dev Gajapati, he is from Orissa, and he had written this text called Sangeeta Narayan. And there are very many other texts also which come at a later time during the 18th century. So you have Nritya Kaumudi and Natya Manorama by Raghunath Rath. So these are the many texts which talk about Odissi, the style of Odissi, the elements in Odissi, what the repertoire is all about. But then the repertoire, the formation of the classical solo repertoire has been developing and had been developing. It was crystallized by many factors, and it took elements from the Mahari dance, it took elements from Gotipua, from the Chau tradition, and so on. But then what it contained, the technicalities with also some elements from the Sanskrit texts of Natya Shastra and Nartana Nirnaya or Abhinay Darpana. So all this had these influence on these texts which were written in Odia, in this part of the subcontinent. Here we have Nritya Kaumudi, then Natya Manorama. And apart from that, all that, we have this Shilpa Prakasha, the text called Shilpa Prakasha, which talks about sculpture, the many elements of sculpture. That also refers to has illustrations of dance. And as we talk about Odissi, we have very important sculptures, positions, which is though not found in many other, compared to the other dance forms, classical dance form, Odissi has many number of sculptural poses, and so you have this reference of dance poses in Shilpa Prakasha. And similar references have also been found from the Jaina text, though not from Orissa, but from Gujarat. The poses of Tribhanga, the Atibhanga postures, all have been part of the Kalpasutra and the Kalkacharya Kathas of Gujarat too. So this image on the right that you see is a text, is a book by Sunil Kothari, wherein he has and Avinash Pasricha. So they have put up this image of a photo of Konarak, the sculptural poses of dances from Konarak. So you have it is not, they not only dance, but they are also the musical accompanying artists here, and you have all of them holding different musical instruments and also dancing here. See, when you look at the other historical aspects, apart from, you have looked at the history part of it, and then seen during who are the rulers who gave them patronage, and from the Jaina period, the sculptural references, then the textual references, and how the text came into being, which had references to the dance at that time. So from there on, you have oral tradition coming up, and oral tradition is wherein you have the dance form as such, which have been practiced and passed on from generation to generation. So that is where you see the live tradition. We have a very rich, we still had Mahari living till 2015 in Odisha. So you have this Mahari tradition which was prevalent and which has been reconstructed, and simultaneously you have this Gotipua tradition, which is done by the young male dancer who do the female impersonation, who dress up as females, and then they dance. They start learning dance for a very young age, and then they perform it. And the difference between the Maharis and the Gotipuas was that Maharis used to perform inside the temples, whereas Gotipuas were positioned in outside the temple arena. So that was their performance space. So you have evidences for this in Gita Govinda also, and then from that period of if you look at the Gita Govinda from the 11th and the 12th century onwards, you have this Mahari tradition in temples, and they used to do in the Natamandirs also. And even these drum chronicles are a great proof of their presence during these times. The drum chronicles, the Madal Panjis, from these are records which have been unearthed from the Puri Jagannath temple, and which talk about the different types of dances that they do, the rituals associated with it, and the events that they have performed in. So these are the chronicles which talk about the dance during that period. So from the 12th century onwards, and so on till 14th, 15th century. And so herein we have a strong reference to the Mahari tradition. And there is also this Gotipua, as I said, and they very interesting part of this is wherein they dance with a lot of acrobatic movements, because they are young dancers. A lot of gymnastic aspects of the dance come into play here, because they cater to the larger audience who are not restricted to the temple arena but outside. So in order to popularize, their movements are also more acrobatic and more appealing to the general public. So that is what is the Gotipua tradition all about. And you have so these traditions, and What is it that is the makeup of this Odisha or Odia dance, the Odissi dance, or sometimes even called the Odissi dance, as it used to be called? So this has a number of references from the Shilpa Shastras, and we have sculpturous poses here. So very special element that we can see here is the Tribhanga, which is not there in any of the classical dance forms anywhere in India. But we do have Atibhanga in the upper torso region, as we have seen in Mohiniyattam, and then sometimes very less, to a lesser extent, in the Manipuri dance tradition of the northeast. But here we have Tribhanga, sometimes the Atibhanga, and it starts from the Samabhanga, then goes on to all these different positions wherein the deflections of the torso, the head, and the feet are very varied. So you have this image of a chauka position, the front image of a chauka. Chauka is a square position, and this is supposedly inspired by the image of Puri Jagannath, the Jagannath himself. The chauka, the seated, the square position is inspired from that image. And then you have the Tribhanga. Tribhanga images of gods dancing is also very prevalent and has been referred to in Shilpa Shastra. So we have found images of Krishna dancing in Tribhanga position, and then there are also very many sculptures of Salabhanjikas, Alasakanyas in many temples of Odisha. So you have this beautiful Tribhanga position. If you look at the image, the Tribhanga, the three deflections, one at the torso and the other at the waist, and the next one, the top part of the head, is also tilted. So you have three tilts. So you have this three tilts. The torso is positioned opposite to the hip deflection, and the head, the deflection of the head is in line with the hip deflection. So that becomes 1, 2, and 3. Thereby you have the beautiful Tribhanga position. So the dancer starts from the Samabhanga and then goes on to the other positions of then comes to the Tribhanga. So as I said, this tradition has been inspired from Mahari, and then Gotipua, then the Bandha Nritya, or which is called the martial arts, the different martial art, and also the Chau of Odisha. Odissi is also, as it is known, what is known as the Natavara Bhangi. So this position of Tribhanga is also known as Natavara Bhangi. And as I said, this is the Chauka position, which is the basic position. And you have also seen the triple bend called the Tribhanga. Let us go on to understand some elements of the technique. Kunchita and Anchita positions are made use of to a greater extent. The image that you see on your left is a famous dancer who is no more. She is Sanjukta Panigrahi, a disciple of Kelucharan, Guru Kelucharan Mahapatra. So you have these special positions and movements also called Meena Dandi, wherein you cover the space like a fish, which is a semicircular walk. And the smallest unit is called the Khandi. As you said, as you have seen in other tradition, like in Bharatanatyam, it is called the Adavu. Likewise, in Odissi, it is called Khandi. And the Khandi together becomes Arasas. As in Adavus, they become the posture. Adavus become Chollus or the core-wise. Likewise, the Khandis become Arasas. These are phrases. And then there are different kinds of sequences called Bailis and the Palis, wherein the Bailis are long sections of Nritta and the Palis are the finale. So they are in triplets, like in Tirmanam of the Bharatanatyam tradition. The bowls and the chollus that we refer to in other traditions are called ukatta or the ukuttu, and they are in beats, different kinds of beats of 5, 4, 6, 7, 8 or 9. And now if you look at the melodic compositions, there are a number of melodic compositions. One of the main one is the Pallavi. And then the musical instrument, as you see on the left, there is a a bit of sitar that you can see being played, and the other instruments are percussion instruments or bhakavach, but then mardala also used to be played. Then there is a flute, sometimes violin is used. Earlier the Odissi veena used to be there, but it is no more. Sitar has replaced it. Then there are manjira or the cymbals. So, and one more important Hindustani influence is the harmonium. So, when you look at the repertoire, it is varied. It starts with the Purvaranga bit, which is called the Bhumi Pranam. The Mangala Charan actually is comprised of the Bhumi Pranam. Sometimes it consists of the Devi Stuti and then Namaskara to the audience. So, you have the Bhumi Pranam here, followed with the Bhatu Nritya, which is a dance in honor of Lord Shiva, which is called Nritya, but then it is pure Nritya. And therein comes all the Nritya elements that we have described here, including the arasas, the khandis, and then the different cadences which come into the bailis and the palas and all that. And the main item is called the Swara Pallavi or the Pallavi. So this is again a nritya item. It is like a jati swaram of the Bharatanatyam tradition, wherein you have the combinations of the jati and the raga, and so it goes on with the hand gestures also, hastabhinaya also. Now comes in the main portion of it is Jayadeva's Ashtapati. It may also consist of a padam. Sometimes contemporary poets may also be used as the padam, like poet Banamali Das' poetry is used, and likewise many poets of those times, the Bhakti poets, have contributed to enriching the repertoire of Odissi, and there has been the Odissi tradition has also drawn in from the contemporary poets of those times. And as a finale to it, to the entire repertoire, you have Thillana, like in Thillana of the Bharatanatyam tradition, you have Tarajan or something called Moksha, which is the concluding Nritya item. The costume of it is very interesting. Orissa is very famous for its silver ornaments, and likewise you have, as you can see in the picture, you have a beautiful waistband, and then the headgear is also very immaculately arranged, which depicts the flowers in a particular order, and the sarees are specifically of the traditional Orissa attire. So all this, I think, has created an interesting view in you and given you an understanding of the many aspects of history, the technique, the costume, the instruments used, the repertoire, and all that. And I believe that this will help you in understanding and analyzing this dance form, and the upcoming sessions in which we'll be taking up the other dance forms also will be interesting to you, and I look forward to seeing you again in the upcoming sessions. Thank you.